Good afternoon, everyone. It is March the 24th, 2025. Yesterday and today, some more came in on the consumption sites and what's going on with them, which I've got another 2 videos, of course, to put up with now with my explanation of those videos. And the first one, and I'm going to put up, was through the Focus Ontario. It's a program that focuses on what our provincial government is doing. And this particular video is on why they shut down 10 of the consumption sites that we've been talking about, which I've been trying to explain a little bit myself. And of course, we had that one that's just moved from one ward to the other ward, right where the consumption is just around the corner from where it closed down and went into the Heart Hub. And I was happy to see that it did go into a Heart Hub rather than Needles Knot, because as I briefly explained, that I had one of my children, and this is back in the 1990s, mid-1990s, when this was happening. One of my children was going to the public school just a couple of blocks away from where the consumption site was. And this was, I've talked about quite a bit in much earlier videos, as you can tell. I've got a lot of videos on my YouTube channel now. I think I'm getting closer to 400 videos now on it. So there's a lot of videos to go through. So those who've been following my videos will catch on to this. And in the 1990s, in the mid-1990s, we had a problem. When they chased the prostitutes and the Johns out of the market area where I'm living now, they invaded both Centretown and Dalhousie, as well as Hittenburg. And that's why I know I read a letter that I'd written to the police commission at the time, to you, from 1996, that I still have in my possession, and explaining that they cannot don't drop the Johns from going after the Johns. And of course, because of what had happened back then, and when they chased the prostitutes, then we suddenly had needles all over the place in both wards. We had condoms all over the place in the wards as well. We had a lot more crime in those wards as they transferred from one ward over to our 2 wards. So again, I was on the community association, like I am today, on their safety committee, both in the 1990s. So I have experience from that, as well as what I've got experience that I talk about today with our community association here in Lowertown. And what we were finding was you couldn't even walk a block without finding condoms and needles all over the place. And so in the parks and in our playgrounds, and where the Heart Hub is now, and the other, when it just moved from Hittenburg, the consumption site from Hittenburg, into Centretown right now, around from where the other one just turned into the Heart Hub. When my child was going to that public school, it was horrific for them, because when they walked to school, or in my case, because we were far enough away, she did get a school bus going to school, but in the morning, the teachers were terrified because they'd be finding condoms and needles all over the schoolyard. And you cannot have children playing in a schoolyard and when you've got needles there. And a lot of our big concerns back then was, fortunately, it was not so much drug overdoses at that time as because we didn't have the fentanyl problem like we do today. But it was a big worry, because they were used needles, or a parent, we had a couple of kids that got stuck with a needle with their little fingers, just going in the sandbox and playing, and there was a needle in it, and they worried that the parents had to go through at that time. Well, is the child going to pick up AIDS or something else from a used needle? So it was a really big concern in the communities surrounding me at the time, and the children, and what could we do? So of course, at that time, we came up with the idea of the John School, where the prostitute and people from the community would come in and talk to these Johns after the police would pick them up. And they had the choice. If they did not have a criminal record, they could be going into the John School to hear what their behavior was doing and affecting everyone from the children up. and the residents in the area from their behavior. And we also put forward the needle hunter program, which we had volunteers going around in the community picking up the XX needles, which they're still doing today as well down in our area here. So I'm happy to see that program wasn't squashed. But it was very dangerous for the children at that time. And this is why, one of the main reasons that I'm also saying that I believe that it is much better that the children, that the needles in these consumption sites do have a distance from our daycares and our children's schools, so that they're not having to face this danger. Now, why are we giving these people that are adults that have a choice and know what they're doing if they take a needle and what's going to happen to them and what could happen, to a poor innocent child who accidentally picks up a needle and sticks themselves with it? That's ridiculous, and they have no idea because young children don't understand. And it was at that point too, because with the schoolyard in the condition it was, that the principal took some petty money out of her petty cash for the school, and this is where the tongs, and I had said this before, the salad tongs came in, because she bought a bunch of salad tongs, and they'd have to go through the schoolyard. Even some of the kids would go through the schoolyard to learn the dangers of these needles, picking up the needles with the salad tongs and to put them in a container where they were secured. And so that then the principal could let the children out of school to play in the playground where they're supposed to be playing. And today we have health officials. Why aren't our children out in the playgrounds playing? And why are they sitting in front of the computers when they should be out exercising? Well, they certainly should be out exercising, and I agree. Take the computers and the cell phones away as much as possible. Yeah, you do have to teach the children some, but moderize it. Would make sure that the kids have a certain balance, even in the school, using if they have to use their cell phones, fine, but take them away. I agree with that. So they're not always on the cell phones, so they're learning like we learned. And so it was a really bad situation back then. And then even my teenage sons, 13 and 15, they go to the corner store, and the prostitutes would actually proposition them. 13, 15 years old. They wanted to have sex with them. And I'm like, oh my God. And we're all looking, and people like myself, parents looking at teenagers, we had this terrible problem. And back then, of course, the police did everything they could, but that's before. And the Gangs and Guns unit came into effect. And they finally, the police department realized they had a problem. They couldn't cope with it, so they had to develop a special unit to deal with it, because it was spreading across the city in certain ways. And then we had with the gangs were coming in. The street gangs were coming in there with the stealing, and the drugs were starting to come in at that point. So they had to put in a unit to deal with this, which I'm glad that they did. But what people don't understand is what we as parents had to do, because our children were being terrorized in the schools. They would show up in cars with guns, and they would terrorize the children into joining these gangs. And we would do everything we could. So it was like the Wild West for us parents at that point in time. So this is why I really believe that wherever children are, and I mean, we still have a lot of playgrounds out too for the children to play in. We don't want them covered in needles and that. One of the other things that I believe that the police department maybe might have to do is with some of their drug dogs is literally, if there's children in the area, they may need to go through the parks in the morning and have the dogs to sniff out the needles and drugs, because there may not be enough people like the needle hunters to go around and volunteers to go around. Well, a dog would sniff out something very quick, sit there, alert the handler. If it's a needle on the ground, at least they could pick it up right away and dispose of it, so that our children aren't being hurt. But this is some of the fallout, and people who are advocating for it, I understand the safe sites. I don't disagree with them totally either. I've seen what's happened. I've seen different problems with it, and the other thing I've seen too is it's not just used needles, because our taxpayers, we pay for when they go into these safe sites and they give out brand new needles in packages. This is why we also, back in the 90s, we had the needle exchange program, where the drug addict would have to come in and exchange a used needle for a new needle, because they're just handing them out. Brand new needles, and you're seeing these brand new needles in packages on the ground, here, there, and I've seen them, we've all seen them. They're not even used. What a waste of money. Unless they're dropping them along, so some other drug addict, oh, there's a clean needle, I'll just pick it up because it's already in a package. So that was another thing. But if you get a curious child who decides to go open the package, then you've got another problem as well. So there's a lot of reasons why I have been in this battle for a long time, and as a parent, I've seen it. And my husband and I having to go to the school, dealing with the gangs that were coming in and terrorizing our children at the time. And I have a whole history behind that. I could tell quite a few stories about what was going on at that time. So we're not really doing a service by putting these safe sites close to the schools. We need to try and buffer our children as much as we possibly can. But if it's not controlled properly, and then like we've had this other site that now has me kind of worried, that's just suddenly decided, well, I'll just move from one ward to the other and set up here. And as I said, and I had just finished putting up a video not too long ago about all the different things that are happening with the needles and the problems, and and these vape pipes and that they're opening up shop, and all the pot shops that are just crowding us out now. It seems like the criminals have far more rights than we have, and all we're trying to do is protect our children. And this is where all this money that's going in and being wasted, I believe, if we're finding these needles on the street that are even in packages, shouldn't be. And I do agree with the government on that point. But the second video I have is now that there's a court challenge. One of the consumption sites, before they all closed down at the end of March, has put a court challenge in. So where that's going to go, I have no idea. But I'm just going to put up what I have so far, and we shall see what happens. But this is a battle, and that's that we have a war on drugs, and it's a crisis, and it became a crisis because I don't believe it was properly looked after by other city councils in the past when all this was happening. We did the best we could at the time when I was in the middle of it, but I know the damage that it can do to our children, and I'm really concerned about the children. So I'm going to leave it there for everyone for today. So everyone, take care, have a good day, and we'll talk again soon, and be safe. Bye-bye.